All right, so welcome. And if you are watching this, I'm just assuming you've played around with Django a bit. You've done some local development with their local development server, the Python manage.py run server. You got maybe a basic app built and you're ready to launch that to the world. Okay, here in this tutorial, we're going to do it. It's a pretty advanced tutorial because we're working with a bunch of different technologies here. We're working in Ubuntu, Linux OS. We're working with Apache, which is a web server. Obviously, we're working with Django. We're making Apache and Django talk to each other using WSGI. We're using MySQL for our database. And we're keeping all our Python dependencies wrapped inside of a virtual environment. Okay, lots of stuff going on. Lots and lots of command line stuff that we're doing. So if you don't have much experience with that, it's going to be a little bit difficult tutorial. You're probably going to have to pause a bunch or rewatch certain things, but I have this slideshow here. I'm going to post a PDF version of this. Check the links for the description of that, so you can always reference that. And then also I'll be uploading as well just a list or history of all the commands that I did in order. Check the description for that as well. So without further ado, let's do this. Okay. I'm not gonna run through all these slides step by step right now. We're just gonna come back and kind of reference them as we get to where we need them. Okay, so step one, we need somewhere for our source code to live. We're gonna use DigitalOcean for that. DigitalOcean is a company they provide VPSs, virtual private servers, among other things. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna use them to create a virtual private server, which is just basically our own tiny little computer that other people can access. And we're going to have full root access, which means full administrator privileges, and it's going to be a good time. So you can use this link. It's also in the description. It is a referral link, in case that wasn't 100% obvious. It is. So if you click on it and you sign up, I will probably get a little bit of money at some point down the road. But you're also going to get $100 in DigitalOcean credits, and you're also getting this tutorial for free. So hey, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. So here it is. Click on that. You'll go to DigitalOcean, sign up, register, and then log in. And you should get to, let's see here. You should get to a page that is somewhat similar to this, depending on when you're watching this video, if they change this at all. But this is my kind of home page, and we're going to create droplets. So it says right here, DigitalOcean droplets are flexible Linux-based virtual machines that run on top of virtualized hardware. Each droplet you create creates a new server you can use. So virtual private server, okay? Now you may be thinking, what if I come down here and click this big old Django thing? Don't do that, because this will also create a VPS, but it's going to create one with a specific version of Django, a specific version of a web server, and a specific version of a way to make those talk, okay? As well as a specific version of a database. So if this is exactly what you need to use in your project, great, do it, and it should be configured for you. But I don't want to use 1.11, I don't want to use Nginx, I don't want to use Unicorn. So I'm just going to create my brand new droplet all by myself so I can configure it exactly the way I want it. Okay, so you can click over here on the left sidebar, manage droplets, or click down here on create droplet. That's what I'll do. And it's going to come up with something like this. So the first thing you want is an image. Okay, you can hover around, you can click on different things to explore a bit. But I'm looking at Ubuntu image. I'm looking at 18.04 x64. That's what I'm using. Now we have to choose a size. So for our purposes, this most basic one, a $5 a month one's going to work great for us. Okay, that gives us 1 gigabyte of RAM, 1 CPU, and 25 gigabytes of hard drive space. That may not seem like a lot of hard drive space, but I guarantee you your Django project is nowhere near that big. Okay, keep scrolling down. Now this isn't a tutorial on security, so we're not, and reliability, so we're not talking about backups, we're not talking about block storage, or we're not doing anything down here with SSH keys. This tutorial is about just how to deploy a Django app, so that's what we're going to focus on. We can talk security and efficiency in other tutorials. All right, choosing a data center region. You want to choose this one that's closest to you. The reason is we're going to be connecting via SSH, so we're going to be connecting to our server through the internet. So it's through the internet, so we want it close to us. Helps reduce a little bit of lag. I'm going to go with New York and number 1 here. Going down, again, we're not worried about SSH keys or any of this additional stuff. If you know what it is and you want it, go for it, but I'm not going to cover it. And then I need to create one droplet. So I'm going to click create here. And you see the name here. I probably should have renamed it to something a little bit better. I don't really need to do it in this case. You probably don't need to do it. Rename this to anything just because it's your only server so far. But if you're managing a bunch of different servers, you want to name them something that's easy to read. All right, so it went through its little installation process, and I notice here it gives me an IP address. So I can click on that. It'll copy it right to my clipboard there, and I can open a new tab, put it in there, and absolutely nothing's going to happen. It refused to connect because we haven't done anything to our server yet. So now we need to actually connect to our server and get it up and running. Okay, so that is the next step here. So what you should do is you should pause the video and you should go check your email, because if you just created a server, DigitalOcean should have sent you login details. Now that's not login details for the website, that's login details for the server, and we need to connect to it and log in. Okay, so pause the video, go get those login credentials, save them somewhere, and then resume. Speaking of that, I need to pause the video and get mine. All right, so I have my password, and I have my my username is just going to be root by default. That's kind of your administrator. And now we got to talk about how we're going to log in. So let's look at this here. Connect to the server, right? If you're using Linux or Mac, you can use a command line tool, SSH. And so this little $, you'll see a lot through this. That just means, hey, it's a command prompt. So go ahead and put that in at the command prompt or the terminal. Okay, SSH with a space followed by your username. In this case, mine is root, the @ symbol, and your IP address. Okay, and then here you go. Here's an example: SSH root at blah 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 blah. Okay, it's going to prompt you. Do you want to add this to your known hosts or something like that? And then it's going to ask you to log in. So I'm going to do that using this, which is a Ubuntu bash shell, and I want to SSH root at, and let's get my IP address, which was this guy right here. You can also get to it by just clicking right here on your DigitalOcean account panel. Give it a second here. And this is what I'm talking about. The authenticity of the host can't be established. Okay, it gives you a little fingerprint. Are you sure you want to continue connecting? Yes, I do. And then it says, hey, it permanently added this to the list of known hosts. So that's good. It means we won't get this warning again. Now it's asking for my password that DigitalOcean emailed you. So I'm going to put mine in. Oh man, my copy and paste isn't working, so looks like I have to put this in manually. I'm going to pause the video and put it in. There we go. You're going to get a kind of welcome screen like this, which shows a little bit of information about our server. Talking about some packages. So you'll see this every time you log in. And it's asking for me to change my password, so I'm just going to go ahead and change that. Which means I have to enter the same thing again. And apparently I entered it wrong again, so let me connect again. There we go. That was fun typing in that long password multiple times. So finally got it logged back in and entered correctly, and then it asked me to enter and retype my new passwords. If you're wondering why you're typing stuff here, nothing's showing up. That's just a security feature. You're entering a password. It's not going to show it to you. So make sure you type it correctly. Okay, so now we're connected. This is via SSH. I'm going to do it real fast for you Windows people using a thing called PuTTY. So I'm going to close out of this. And the link to install PuTTY is in the description. But it's going to come up with something like this right here. Okay, Now you want to click up here in session, put your host name or IP address there. So I'm going to copy this, put it in here. Port 22 is what you want. That's your default SSH port. So you also want to make sure your SSH thing right here is selected. And then you just hit open. Okay, same thing as saying, hey, the host key is not recognized. Do you want to add it? Same exact thing that happened before. Now I'm just doing login as root. And then I have to give the password. And same exact welcome screen. I'm just going to go ahead and make this a little bit bigger for us so it's easier to see. Change settings. Let's see. Windows appearance. Here we go. There you go. That should be a little bit easier for you to follow my commands. All right, so now let's get going here. Now, if you haven't worked in the command line before, it's gonna baptism by fire here, but hey, you're gonna need to know it, so may as well start learning now. ls lists the contents of my directory. What I want to do is I want a cd, which means change directory, and the / there means go to the root level directory. So I hit ls and I can see all the directories that are in my system, or ls-l will show them in a list. Okay. All right, now that we've connected to our server, let's look at the next step here, which is apply software update. So our little $ symbol, right? Command prompt, bash terminal, right? So you want to do apt space update space 2 and symbols and apt upgrade. So let's go ahead and do that. Apt update and apt upgrade. Okay, this is how we make sure our server is completely up to date. I'm going to pause it. I'm going to let it go through this whole thing. And I got this at the bottom. So 69 packages can be upgraded, but it says, hey, invalid operation, UGRADE, upgrade. So just a little spelling error here. So I pressed up to get my last command, and it's upgrade, not ugrade. So redo that again, pausing the video. And for any of these prompts right here, just go ahead and hit yes, Y for yes, and pause in the video. Okay, if you get this screen, just go ahead and do whatever the default thing is here. It looks like they want us to keep the local version, so sure. Go ahead and press enter, and it should go through that. All right, so everything's hopefully updated. Everything's done. I got a few more prompts. I just went with whatever their default value was and hit enter. Okay. Now I'm going to hit Control L, which is going to clear the screen. You'll see me do ls a bunch. But now what I want to do is look at our next step here, which is step 4, create a directory structure. Okay, so where do we want our project to live? This is just an option. It's pretty easy to set up in terms of a tutorial. There's many different ways you can organize your code or your architecture for your web application and all its dependencies. But this is just what I'm going to do. Okay, so I want to make sure I'm in the root of my system, which we saw that before, the CD for change directory and the /. And I'm going to create the following directory structure here. Okay, I'm going to create a directory called tutorial. I'll just call mine, but you can put whatever your project name is. Inside of that, I'm going to have 3 directories. I'm going to have site, I'm going to have Django, and I'm going to have auth. And then inside of site, I'm also going to have 2 more directories, logs and public. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. All right, root level directory. So I'm going to make directory and I'm going to call it tutorial. And I'm going to cd into tutorial, change directory into tutorial, ls, there's nothing here as expected. And I'm just going to say, hey, make directory site, make directory Django, make directory auth. So now if I ls, I have 3 directories in here, auth, Django, and site as expected. I'm going to cd into site. And I'm going to make directories for logs. And you can chain these all in one line, so I'm going to do that. Make directory logs and public. And there we go, logs in public are there. So that was a pretty fast step. Let's look at the next step, which is installing pip and setting up virtual environment. Okay, so pip is a package manager. You have probably seen that at least by now, especially if you watch any of the Django tutorials we've done. Because Django is a Python package, so you can use pip to install it. And then virtual environment, right, is used to manage Python packages for different projects. Technically, you don't need to use it here because we're only serving one Python project, but it's considered good practice regardless, so we're going to set it up anyways. And here are the commands to do it. Sudo is kind of like your administrator, so it's saying, hey, run this command as the administrator. So sudo apt install python 3-pip and sudo pip3 install virtual env, and then we'll run through this create virtual environment. Okay, so sudo apt install python 3-pip. Do I want to continue? Yes. So it's 247 megabytes. It's going to take a second. Pausing the video. Okay, now that we have python 3 pip installed, Control L to clear my screen. And I should be able to say, hey, pip3 freeze. And that's going to say, hey, look at all this stuff I've already got installed for pip. So this is kind of what comes default with it. Django isn't there, but at least I didn't get command not found, so therefore pip is working. So now I want to say sudo pip3 install virtual env. Okay, so there we go. It's a small file, and it created it for us. So now we want to create our virtual environment. This is where our kind of install of Django is going to live. Now I'm going to do that, and I'm going to cd back up to the root level directory, so cd /, and then I'm going to go into my directory I created, the tutorial. Again, yours might not be tutorial, whatever project name you're working with. And I'm just going to say virtual env, so this is the command. Now we give it a name, venv, and just to be safe, I'm going to give it the -p option and tell it to use Python 3. So if I have multiple versions of Python, I can tell this to use something else. I could say Python 2, I could say Python 3.4, whatever, but this is going to use whatever Python 3 is as a command. So press that, and you'll see it's installing, so it's using my Python 3 interpreter, which is perfect. That's what I wanted. It set everything up. Now I need to activate it. So I'm going to say source venv, which is the directory I just made, and just to prove it to you, do an ls. There it is right there. So source venv, go into venv, go into the bin directory, and activate. There you go, and you notice at the front of my prompt there, I got the venv displayed. So I'm on my virtual environment. We can see it. We can see pip freeze, and we previously had all sorts of stuff. Oh, pip freeze, and now I have nothing, which is perfect. That's what we want. So we want to install Django. It's a package. It's a Python package. Pip is a Python package manager. So I can simply say pip install Django. And let's see, so it's giving me Django 2.1.4. So a good reason why we're not using those one-click apps DigitalOcean gives us, because I want to use a different version of Django, among other reasons why we don't want to use those. I mean, they're good, but we're not going to use them. Okay, so that is step 5. Let's go ahead and look at step 6. Okay, step 6, we want to create a Django project. So this should be pretty familiar to you. Make sure your venv, your virtual environment's activated. So pip freeze, we just did that. We also installed Django, so that's great. Now I'm going to change directory into that, whatever your project name is, in the Django folder we created. And then just run this command, Django admin, start project, and whatever you want to call it. Then a few more steps we'll talk about when we get there. So let's do that. Okay, so cd into Django. I have nothing in here, so Django admin start project, and then I'll call it just tutorial. So created that tutorial directory. I'm going to cd into that, and let's see what else this thing wanted us to do. Change directory into the created project where manage.py is our root level directory, and add our server's IP address to settings.py, the allowed host content. Okay. So now we have to talk about how we can type, how we can actually edit files directly from the command line. Okay, so I need a cd into tutorial, right, where my settings are, because I need to edit this file. Now, you may be familiar with Vim. If you're familiar with Vim, use it, but to be a little bit more user-friendly, I'm going to use Nano. So Nano settings.py, okay? Nano is a kind of text editor. You can see your commands that you can do down here. So let's find our allowed hosts constant, and we just want to come in here and add a string, and we want to give it our IP address. Let me make sure I get my IP address over here. And I copy and pasted. So I pasted using the right click on my mouse there. Okay. And now I want to Control X to exit and then Y to write it. Okay, now just to make sure that it actually wrote, I'm going to go back in one more time just to make sure. And there it is. So it actually wrote. Perfect. Okay, so we added our server's IP address. Now we need to run our development server. So you're not going localhost anymore. This time you're doing 0.0.0.0:8000. So the port 8000, okay? So 0000:8000. Then we're going to go to that in our browser. All right, so let's see, Python manage.py. Oh, I need to be up one directory, huh? This thing is running extremely slowly today. Go up one directory where manage.py is, and Python manage.py. Run server 0.0.0:8000. It is wrapping around on a line, but that's one command there. Okay, perfect. I'm not going to worry about migrations or anything because we're not going to use the SQLite database. So we can actually go and look at our server. Now you may want to try to go to this IP address, and that's not going to work. You just need to replace all these zeros with your IP address. So in my case, it's going to look like this. Let me open up a new tab here. And I'm going to say, hey, go to my IP address, port 8000. There we go. It worked. So there is my Django installation being served from my server at that IP address. Okay, but obviously we don't want our users to have to do this. We want them just to be able to put in our address there and have it work, which right now this isn't going to do anything for me. So let's move on to the next step. Okay, the next step is to install MySQL, which is a kind of production level database. And that way we're not using that db.sqlite 3, which for small projects is probably okay, but anything of scale or anything is going to require a much better database. So we may as well do it now. Okay, it's pretty easy. Okay, from the command prompt, from the terminal, we're going to enter sudo, again for our administrator, apt, and then install mysql-server. And then we're going to say sudo mysql secure installation. It's going to bring up a bunch of prompts. Basically, we want to say yes to all those prompts, and then we're going to run through some MySQL commands. So let's see that. Okay, so I was in here. I killed my server using Control-C. I'm going to cd back to the root level directory. Not really a need to, but I'm just going to do it anyways. And we're looking for sudo. Apt is our command. Install. And then the name of the package, mysql-server. Okay, 162 megabytes is what it looks like down here. I'm just going to hit yes. And I'll pause the video and come back. Alright, looks like MySQL installed without any errors. That's perfect. So now I'm going to do sudo mysql_secure_installation. This is going to kind of walk us through some security steps. Okay, validate password plugin. basically is going to only allow us to create strong passwords. I'm going to say why. And I'm going to say, hey, I want strong passwords. So I'm going to go with 2 for strong. And now it wants me to set a new password. So I'm going to do that. Okay. So it says, hey, that password's only at 50%, but I'm just going to continue with it. Okay, remove anonymous user. So you can read about here. So by default, the MySQL installation has an anonymous user, allowing anyone to log into MySQL without having to have a user account. Doesn't sound good to me, so we're going to go ahead and remove that. So just hit yes. Here we go. So normally the root should only be allowed to connect from localhost. Okay, that ensures that someone cannot guess at the root password from the network. So disallow remote login. Yeah, we don't need it, so may as well disallow it. Okay, remove test database. So by default, MySQL comes with a database named test that anyone again can access. Doesn't seem very secure. Let's go ahead and remove that. So yes. And then finally, reloading the privilege tables will ensure that all changes made so far would take place immediately. Maybe if we don't do this, our changes never get applied, so they don't really have the effect. So we want to reload our privilege tables. So go ahead and hit Y for yes. There we go. We're all done. So now we need to create a user and a database. Okay. Again, we're not going to go super in depth into MySQL and all the different commands and different stuff you can do with them, but here's the commands we need right here. So we're going to create a username, and we're going to say, hey, username at localhost identified by, and then we're going to give it a password. Then I'm going to create a database, and we're going to name it whatever we really want. In this case, Django Project. I'll probably just call it tutorial, but whatever, this is the name of the database that you want. Then you got to grant all privileges on that database we just created to the user we created. Okay, Django is going to connect via this user to this database. So A, this database has to exist. B, this user has to exist. And C, this user has to have all the privileges on that database, right? Because Django is going to automatically create, read, update, delete database entries for us so that through this user. So that user needs all those privileges. And then we're going to flush those privileges. So again, that's kind of like a quick reset, resets all those privileges to make sure what we just did takes effect. So let's do that. All right, Control L to clear my screen again. Now the command to get into MySQL is MySQL. Okay, so there we go. Since I'm logged in as root, it's letting me connect right away. And let's see, so we have our MySQL prompt. So we need to start working with those commands. So create user, username in quotes, at localhost in quotes, identified by, whatever password we want. Let's see, I'll go with this just random password and hopefully it passes. Oh, let me redo that. Again, you can put whatever you want here, but if it's not strong enough, it's not going to let you do it. So there we go. Your password does not satisfy current policy requirements, which is from that MySQL installation. So let's try it again. Create user. Username at localhost. Identified by. And then we put another password in quotes here. End it with a semicolon. So the password I'm going to use, let's do this. See if that's good. And may as well put the one on in there. Okay, still doesn't satisfy the current policy requirements. So one more time here. Create user. Username at localhost. Identified by. There we go. So that finally worked. Now you may want to copy and paste this and put it somewhere. Okay. So I clicked the right button again, and that kind of helped me on my mouse copy it. You'll notice it also pasted it, which is a putty thing, and that's pretty annoying. But if you can't do that, you may have to just manually write it down. So write it down, keep it somewhere safe, because we're going to need it here in a minute. And if you forget it, it's not a big deal. Come back here and just create another user. All right, the next thing is we need to create a database. So I can do show databases. And it says these are the only databases that come built in with MySQL. We're going to create one. So I'm going to say create database. And I'm just going to call it tutorial. The name here doesn't really matter. It's just we're going to need it again here in a second because we got to tell Django to use this database. And then finally, I'm going to grant all privileges on my database tutorial dot my asterisk for all, so all the tables inside of my tutorial database to the user at localhost. Okay, query okay, 0 is affected, perfect. So now I finally need to flush privileges. And there we go, now we're done. So that's a little quick crash course in creating a user in MySQL, creating a database, and granting the privileges on that. If you are curious, you don't need these capitals. These commands here don't need to be in capitals, but it's a general convention that people will do this, so you'll see it all the time. All right, that takes care of step 7, which is this. We installed MySQL, we did our secure installation, we created a user, gave it this kind of crazy password, and then granted all the privileges on our database to it and flushed those privileges to kind of reset them, make them take effect immediately. So the next thing is step 8. We need to tell Django that we're going to use MySQL, and we're going to need to say, hey, you're going to use this username, you're going to use this crazy long password, and then, hey, you're also going to look for this database. Okay, now to do this, we need to first install this MySQL client Python package. So it's a Python package. And here are commands to do it. First, we need to install the Python 3 development kind of packages. So that's apt install python 3-dev. Then we need to install the MySQL client kind of development packages. So that's apt install lib mysql client/dev. And then when we get all those installed, we need to install MySQL clients via pip. So if you try this one first, pip install MySQL client, it's going to give you some errors. So let's even look at those errors. I need to exit out of MySQL. And let's see, let's do a pip freeze. Okay, I only have Django and pytz in here. So what happened right now if I just do pip install MySQL client? Here you go, you're gonna get this. Command python setup.py egg info filled with error code, blah blah. And it's like, I have no idea what this stuff means. Okay, cool. All that's kind of going on is we didn't install the dependency it needs in the correct order. So that's back here in our step 8. So I'm gonna say sudo apt install python 3-dev. Okay, so that's good. And sudo apt install lib mysql client-dev and hit yes. So up here I actually already had python 3-dev installed, which is good. Now I need to install the MySQL client, and that's looking good. So now I should be able to Control L to clear the screen, hit up a few times to bring up my history, and pip install MySQL client, and voila, whatever it is, voila, it is done. So now I have MySQL client installed. I can do a pip freeze, and there it is right there. All right, so now that's the kind of first part. What's the next part of step 8? Well, we're going to create this file, mysql.conf. Again, the name doesn't matter whatsoever. It can be, myfavoritekitty.cenf or myfavoritekitty.text, whatever you want. But I'm going to use this convention, mysql.cenf, and this is exactly what I'm going to add. Okay, and then we're going to use this file, and we're going to tell Django to connect with the settings stored in here. So it's a little more secure. That way I don't need my database, my user name, and my password in my settings.py file. I can keep it in this MySQL file on my server, so it's not stored in GitHub or anything else like that. So let's do this. Okay, so where am I? Looks like I'm in my root level directory. I'm going to cd into my project folder, the root project folder there, tutorial. And that's why I created this auth folder. And in here, I'm going to nano, and we called it what? mysql.cnf. Okay, so we're going to say, hey, not container. We're going to say client in brackets. And then I'm just going to say database equals whatever your database name was you created with in the MySQL commands we did a second ago. Mine was tutorial. Then I'm going to say you're my user. And I'm going to put these in quotes as well. Mine was just username. Maybe you would put yours like Django user or project user, something like that. And then password is going to equal to that long password that I had. Let me copy it, bring it over here and paste it. There we go. So that's looking good. And then finally, the default character set. I do not believe this is required. I'd have to check the documentation, but I may as well throw it in there anyways. There we go. Now Control X, Y, Enter, and there we go. There we go, and Control X. There we go. All right, so ls, and I can cat, and there we go. It prints out. So I got tutorial, username, that crazy long password of random characters, pretty much UTF-8 character and set. Everything looks good. So now we need to restart MySQL. And you do that just by sudo systemctl restart MySQL. Sudo systemctl, all one command, restart MySQL. There you go. All right, so now let's look at the next part of step. That was 8A, moving on to 8B. So we need to tell Django to use this file. So we have that database as constant in the settings.py. Previously, we had it set to SQLite. Now we're going to say, hey, your engine's going to be this MySQL backend. So django.db.backends.mysql. And then your options are going to be this read default file, and that's where we're telling it, hey, go into the root level directory. That's why that / is right there, so it's an absolute path. So root level directory of our operating system, go into tutorial, go into auth, go into mysql.cnf. Of course, you're going to have to change this path right here for whatever your directory structure is. And then we're going to create a super user, make migrations, run server, and we're going to make sure that everything is being, or make sure that our MySQL is working correctly. So let's check that out. All right, so I need to cd into one directory up. That's what the two periods mean. So, hey, change directory, up one directory. I need to go into my Django. I need to go into my tutorial. And in here, I need to find my settings.py, which is inside of my tutorial folder. There we go. Here's the project package. There's my settings.py. So I'm going to nano it. Scroll down. We're looking for the database constant. There it is, databases. And I am just going to comment this out. Maybe I don't want to delete it because I want it there just in case something goes wrong for testing. It's easier to remember. And I'm just going to do it. So databases equals default All right, this thing is running slow and it's really starting to annoy me here. So I'm just going to delete all this here. I wrote it in a text file, so I'm just going to copy and paste it in. There we go. So databases, it's a dictionary, all right? Open and close. Okay, default is my first keyword. It's also a dictionary. You have an engine keyword, and that's being a django.db.backends.mysql. Your second key is options. Okay, and that's also a dictionary. And the first key in that dictionary is read underscore default underscore file. And then the path to that file we just created, that MySQL CNF file or whatever you called it. So make sure it's absolute. So it should start with a /. and then make sure the directory structure and the path is absolutely correct. And then Control X, yes, I want to save it, and enter. Okay. Now what I want to do, cd backup to my root level directory, and I want to say manage.py check. Make sure I didn't make any syntax errors, which apparently I did. It's on line 94, right before auth password validator, so let's look at that. Nano tutorial settings.py. Let's see what I did wrong here. Templates, WSGI, application. Oh, you know what? It looks like this is not a closed off dictionary. Let's see. So this bracket closes that one. This bracket closes that one. Yep, I'm missing the one to close this database up there. So even with copy and paste, I messed it up. All right, Control X, and let's go ahead and write that. Now let's see if manage.py check works. All right, perfect. Now I want to create a super user. Okay, so and let's see, before we create a super user, let's just see what it does. Create super user. Okay, it's going to give us an error, right? Because it says, hey, tutorial, which is great. It doesn't have this table. So right off the bat, it's perfect that we're getting this because it's not getting a, hey, you can't connect error. So you may see something like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm in nano, and I'm going to say my root level directory, auth, mysql-conf, and let's just change my username to have multiple A's. Let's go ahead and try that command again. Manage.py check. So that's working good. Let's try to create a super user. And now it's saying, hey, access denied, right? So if you see access denied, it's either an issue with your username or your password. So double check those. Make sure those are correct. If you can't get it after a couple minutes, just bite the bullet, create a brand new one, and try it. But if you don't see that and you see what I got just a second ago, that's perfect. It means it means your app can actually talk to the database. Let me get my MySQL-conf set up correctly again. Create super user. So there you go, that auth user. Django's trying to go into this auth user table and create a super user. It can't find it. So that's because we need to migrate first. So migrations build all those tables. Now they're actually should exist. You could go into MySQL and figure it out. So MySQL, right? Show databases. There's my tutorial. I'm going to use tutorial. And I'm going to show tables. There you go. So those are all the tables it just built. Previously, this was blank. All right. Exit there. Now I need to create a super user. Manage.py create super user. All right, I'm going to leave it blank to use it as root. Sure, that's fine. Why not? Email address, I'm going to leave blank and give it a password. Not my crazy super secure MySQL password. There we go. All right, now let's go ahead and check our website again. So I'm going to say python manage.py. Manage.py run server. IP address 0.0.0, port 8000. Everything's working good. No migration warnings here, so that's good. Let's check it in a browser. So it's right here. Oh, yep, that's because I don't have the port on the end. So put the port on the end. That's Django, so that's looking good. Now what I want to do is make sure, get the /admin, make sure I can log in. All right, just again, double checking my MySQL. So I think we said root, and then I gave it this password here. And I get the Django admin panel. Perfect, so there we go. Now we got MySQL, we got Django working, and we got it serving from the local server. Okay, the next thing we want is we don't want to have our users to put this port in, right? Because in real life, this IP address, instead of being an IP address, would be a website URL like google.com or projectfullstack.com, okay? and we don't want them to have to put this port in. So we need Apache to do that. So that's step 9, install and configure Apache. All right, install and configure Apache. So this is kind of the most complicated. Not installing it, but configuring it gets pretty complicated, and it's very easy to get into errors with this. And I'll try to kind of point out a few common error spots as I go. Okay, first of all, obviously we need to install Apache. Okay, so sudo apt install. We keep seeing this command, Apache 2, and then we're going to use this thing called WSGI to talk back and forth between Apache and Django. You may have noticed in your previous Django experience that there's this file called wsgi.py. Well, we're going to use that. So basically, Apache is a web server. We're going to tell it to go to wsgi.py, and then wsgi.py is going to say, hey, launch Django. So it acts as kind of like a middleware between it. There's a link in the description to, it should be the WSGI project. You can read more about it there. But I'm going to run this command. Back at my server, control C to kill that server, and then I'm going to say that command sudo apt install. I'm going to say, hey, install Apache 2. And while you're installing things, may as well go ahead and install lib Apache 2 mod wsgi py3. Yes, to install all this stuff. Now let's go back to our browser. Okay, right now if we go to this, just hit enter, nothing's gonna happen, right? Because we killed that development server. But what happens if we just put in our IP address? Ooh, Apache 2 default page. So there we go. That kind of is our confirmation that, hey, Apache 2 is installed. And if you really want to nerd out, you can read some more about it here. There's also the link to the Apache 2 documentation in the description of the video. But I'm going to tell you what we need to do to get this thing going. Okay. Now, all your Apache installation, all the things that we really care about, lives in this thing. So cd to the root, go into etc, etc, Apache 2, and you'll see all sorts of stuff here. Okay, we're really looking for what's in this sites available. So I'm going to cd into sites available. Come on now. cd sites available. There we go. And in here, 000 default.conf. Okay, so this is kind of what we expect to see. And this is what we're going to modify to say, hey, use our settings for our project. So I'm going to nano into that. Okay, and you see there's a lot of stuff going on. Again, this isn't going to be a real in-depth Apache class. We're just trying to think of what we can do to get our app up and running. So I'm going to delete a bunch of this stuff, all these comments. I'm just going to hit Control K. That's kind of delete line. If you go a little bit too much and say like you delete the server admin, you can hit Control U, and that's going to bring that stuff back. All right, delete the rest of this stuff down here. And let's talk about what we want this thing to look like. Okay, now again, we probably might want to create our own conf file and not modify the default one, but we're just going to do it this way right now because we're just trying to get this thing up and running. Okay, this is what we want. The server admin and the document root, we can leave the same. Okay, error log and custom log, we're going to change that. We created that logs directory. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to say, hey, I want my logs to live in there. This should have a logs directory underneath it. So project name, site, logs, access log, project name, site, logs, error log. Okay, and then we're going to have to say, remember how we talked about it needs that wsgi.py, so we need to tell Apache to go talk to wsgi.py. So this is kind of where we're doing that, or one of the parts we're doing it. So you'll see this a lot in Apache where it looks almost like HTML, right? Or XML. you have a directory, almost an element. We're in that directory element, we're going to put the path to the directory containing wsgi.py. So not the absolute path to the file, okay, but the absolute path to the directory containing it. Okay, so you should not see a wsgi.py on this line. You should see the directory it contains. And then we have this files kind of element here, and that's where we say, hey, wsgi.py and require all granted. Okay, so this is common Apache stuff. Then we need to be able to tell it to, hey, use our virtual environment, and here's all our WSGI settings. This first one right here, daemon process, you got to give it a name, and you need to make sure these process groups and your daemon process group, that first kind of argument there, is the same. Okay, and then this Python path, this first thing is going to equal, and then that's the absolute path to the directory containing manage.py. Okay, so this is the path that it should be starting to look for stuff in. Absolute path directory manage.py is. So again, the directory, not the actual manage.py file. Then the Python home is going to equal wherever our virtual environment is, the root level of our virtual environment. Okay, so remember mine lives in tutorial, venv. Yours is whatever your project name is, and then venv if you did it the way I did it. Okay, just remember this should not be like ven/ben/activate. It's just wherever the root level directory is, venv. Okay, we talked about the process group. And then finally, this kind of script alias here. Okay, 1 / followed by a space, followed by the path to the directory containing wsgi.py, finally wsgi.py. So this final one is the only one where you're pointing 100% to the file wsgi.py as opposed to just the directory. So as you can see, this is a lot of stuff that's going on. Okay, and this is where almost all the errors, okay, come from. At least the really hard to debug errors start to come from this. So it's very important you pay very careful attention to the syntax here, making sure you're getting your directory names right, making sure if it's a absolute directory from the root, which all these are, okay, making sure they start with the /, making sure your spelling's correct. Again, that goes back to making sure your directories are correct. Okay, and then following this. Here's an example, pretty much the one I'm going to use right here. So let's go ahead and do this. All right, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this Apache logdir here. And I'm going to say I want it to use tutorial, and then I should have called my directory logs. Now it doesn't matter that we haven't created this error.log file yet, as long as this directory is correct. It's MySQL, Apache is going to create it for us. So same thing, tutorial, logs. Actually, I think it's site logs. Yeah, it should be site logs. So tutorial, site logs, access log, and error log. So that's good. All right, now I need that kind of directory element we talked about, that thing that go ahead and tells us where wsgi.py is. So directory, and then the path to the directory containing wsgi. Okay, not the file. So that's for mine. That should be tutorial. I think I created the Django directory. In there, I created that project tutorial, and in there, there's another kind of tutorial package level that has a settings.py, the urls.py, and the wsgi.py. So that's that. Go ahead and close that. Look how slow this thing is. Killing me. Okay, now I create the files. wsgi.py and files. Close it. Now I just say, hey, require all granted. Okay, so hey, in this directory, you can go ahead and access this file. It's all granted to that wsgi.py. So now Apache can connect to that file. So that's perfect. So now we just got to do that kind of crazy wsgi daemon process, all that stuff. So let's look at that. WSGI daemon process. Got to give it a name. I'm just going to call it tutorial. And then the Python path. So this is going to equal where manage.py is, the directory, okay? So for me, that's absolute path to tutorial, to Django, to tutorial, and that's where my manage.py is. And on the same line, just put a space there, and it's Python home, and this is pointing to your root level of your virtual environment, which for me is tutorial venv. And got some weird wrapping stuff going on there, but okay. So hopefully I didn't create or make any spelling errors in there or syntax errors. We'll check here in a second. Now we use WSGI process group, and all we do for this is give it the same name we put right there, so tutorial. Then we do WSGI script alias. Give it that root symbol there, the /, and then a space. And then this is the absolute path to your WSGI.py. So it's pretty much the same thing right here, just with WSGI.py on the end of it. So tutorial, Django, tutorial, and tutorial followed by WSGI.py. And the virtual host, let's hope I didn't mess that up. That's a lot of typing. Again, it's super easy to make errors in that file. If you do make errors, they'll pop up in that error log. So we'll go look at that here in a second. All right, now we need to check our syntax, right? Make sure I didn't enter anything, at least syntactically incorrect. Maybe I have directory structures, directory names incorrect, but I want to make sure I didn't make any syntax errors. So that's sudo apache ctl config test. And you're going to see this, that's fine, but you're looking for that syntax okay. So, all right, let's see what happens. Now I need to do sudo. I need to restart Apache for those server settings to take effect. Sudo service Apache 2 restart. Okay, good, no errors. Go back here. So it was previously going to Apache's default page. Let's see what happened. And look, I'm absolutely amazed that I did that without any errors. That is 100% luck. I almost always run into some error right there. So let's look. The most common error I've run into is normally, because there's a lot of typing down here, normally I get something wrong down here. Most of the time I actually leave this WSGI.py off. So I'm going to do this just so you can kind of see where to go to look, maybe get a little bit of information if you run into errors. Okay, I'm going to restart that and go back here. Okay, forbidden. You don't have permission to access the root on this server. Now that doesn't really tell us much. So what you can do is check the error logs. And remember, we set that error log to something specific. So I go cd into Django, we put it in site, and then it was in logs, and there is that access log. So you can look at that, and that's going to tell you who's accessing the server. But here's my error log right here, and it's saying, hey, client denied by server configuration, and then it's this. So again, it doesn't really give us too much information, but at least just by looking at this, we know that it's something with Apache itself, and it's something with our server configuration. At least we've kind of narrowed the problem down, maybe at least a little bit. All right, so now I need to get back into Etsy, Apache 2 sites available, and I need to nano that default.conf and put it back to what it was. And we're almost done. One final step here, which I'll show you what we need to do here. Come on, let me restart the server. There it is. Okay, so now watch what happens if I go to admin. Look at this. So I have no CSS. It's ugly, right? You can even look over here, go into your console. see all this stuff is 404 errors. Okay, so that's the next step. And the final step, okay? So basically, in the default kind of Django run server, it's serving its own static files. Well, it's not going to do that for us, so we need to tell it using Apache. All right, we did this. Static files are not loading. We need a place for our static files to live on our server. So again, this is just a practice that I do from time to time. Not required. You can put them anywhere you want, but just make note of the directory you're putting them. And I'm going to put them right here. Project name, site, public, static. So I'm going to go ahead and create that. All right, root level directory, going into my tutorial directory, going into my site, going into my public. And in here, I'm going to make a directory static. All right, perfect. So now that that directory exists, okay, I need to also add it to the settings.py. I need to tell Django, hey, your static root where all your static files live are that directory right there. The same one I just created. So up one directory, up one more directory, cd into Django, cd into tutorial. Should be one more level, yep, cd into tutorial. And I need to nano my settings.py all the way at the bottom here. I'm just going to say create a new constant static root, and they should talk about it here at this URL if you're curious of what that is. But static root and the absolute path again to that directory. So tutorial, I think we called it site public static. All right, now we need to tell Django, hey, all those static files you normally use, okay, I want you to put them into that static root, that directory we just created. And that's up one directory, and then python manage.py, and we need to say collect static. There you go. See 119 static files copied there. I can even go in there, tutorial site public static. And there you go, my admin, so it's all the admin files. There's CSS, fonts, image, all of this stuff is just copied there, which is perfect. That's what I want. And now you may be thinking, awesome, cool, let me come back here. Let me go back here to, oh, that's not it. That's my nano cheat sheet, because I don't really use it too often. Here we go. You may say, hey, maybe I'll just go here again. It's not working, what's going on? Well, Apache now needs to know to look for static files in there as well. All right, definitely gets a little confusing. So you can see what we need to add to Apache, that 00default.conf file. Okay, you need to use this alias keyword, so that directory kind of thing going on again. So hey, go into wherever our static is and then require all granted. Cool, but we need to put this little alias right above it. So this is what it looks like. Okay, I need to go to Etsy, Apache, 2 sites available, and nano 00 default. Now I'll just create my directory first. And where is that going? Well, that's going to tutorial, Django site public static, I think it was. We'll see. If I get this wrong and I refresh that browser and I get nothing, that means something's going on with this. All right, in here I need to say, hey, go in there and require all granted. And then finally, I need to add the alias. Okay, it's going to say, hey, static. Anytime you see this, I also mean go into here, which is the directory, pretty much the same exact this directory right there. So tutorial, Django, site, public, static. All right, Control X, Control Y, and enter. Now let's just go ahead and restart our Apache 2 sudo service, Apache 2 restart. Okay, should probably check my syntax too. So that's sudo Apache CTL config test. Syntax okay, perfect. Go here to my browser. Enter. All right, something's going on. So I'm getting 403 forbiddens. Okay, that's why it's very important to look at your console. So 403 forbiddens for these directories here. Alrighty, so when I run into this, 403 forbidden, first thing I think is probably my configuration file is bad. Second thing I think is maybe Apache itself doesn't have permission to access that directory. Okay, typical file permission stuff. So let's go with the first, hopefully, answer or option. Alright, so I just added this. Let's look at this. Alias static, so that's good. Okay, when it sees static, it's going to look in this folder, which is tutorial Django site public static. Tutorial Django, that's the problem. I need to remove this Django. Or hopefully that's the problem. It's definitely a bad path. That's the correct path. Tutorial site public static, not tutorial Django site public static. See if that worked. And I need to restart it. Anytime you change a setting there, you need to restart it. Sudo service Apache to restart. And now refresh. There we go. Now it's working. Alright, except my internet is slow. Very slow tonight. I need to restart my router or something. Alright, so there you go. Super long tutorial. But we got through it all. I got a Django site being published. I got it serving static files. So if you're doing this, if you're continuing development, anytime you change your Django files, you're going to need to restart Apache. And anytime you change your CSS files, you're going to need to collect static. And I don't think you need to restart Apache. I'd have to check. Again, a lot of stuff going on here. I can't memorize everything. But if you change your static files, like you make some CSS changes and then go ahead and collect static and see what happens. All right, so lots of stuff going on. Again, I'll post the presentation, link to that somewhere in the description. Just go ahead and look for it, as well as a list of the commands should be in there as well. And all right, thanks.